Every town has its secrets, but in Prince Albert, those secrets whisper from the shadows. Tonight, we're diving into ghost stories that blend history, mystery, and the unexplained, straight from the people who live them as part of this listener collection episode. Good evening, and welcome back to ParaGhoul Paranormal Discoveries from the Dark. I'm your host, K.D. Culpa, a horror author and paranormal researcher based in Regina, Saskatchewan. Each week on the podcast, we dive into the shadows of Saskatchewan's past and even go beyond, uncovering dark history, mysteries, urban legends, and sometimes we even get to some monsters. If you're one of the listeners that comes back each week but aren't yet subscribed, please hit that follow button and share it with someone who loves the weird and wonderful. I've got more big guests and haunted deep dives coming your way, so join me now as we explore the unknown and bring life to the ghosts and monsters hiding in the dark. We have another special Haunted Saskatchewan Listener Collection episode. Tonight we feature spine-chilling stories and unexplained events submitted by you, our listeners. If you want to submit your own stories for a chance to be featured in an upcoming episode, then make sure you listen to the end to learn how to do just that. Tonight we are featuring Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Some of these stories might be more well known to those who have dug into ghost stories in Prince Albert before, but I can guarantee we have a couple that have never been heard before, and that's because they are personal experiences. But first, let's talk a bit about the history of Prince Albert, or PA as it's commonly called here. Or at least when I was growing up in Nipawin, that's what we always called it. It is located on Treaty 6, as it has long been the homeland to many Indigenous groups, including the Woodland Cree, Plains Cree, Swampy Cree, Dene, and the Dakota and Métis nations. In 1776, a European trading post was established in the area by a man named Peter Pond, who was an American explorer and merchant. Fort Sturgeon was built a few kilometers west of the current city limits, but unfortunately it had burned down by 1780. Now, later on, the Hudson's Bay Company built trading posts kind of east of the area after one of its employees by the name of James Isbister settled near PA, the PA area, in 1862. Now, remember, this was all before it was known as Prince Albert, which we'll get into where it got its name in a minute here. Then in 1866, Reverend James Nisbet, a minister from the Canadian Presbyterian Church, arrived with his wife and a group of people to establish a mission in the area. Apparently, it was this mission, which is where the city finally got its name, or at least would eventually get its name from, as the mission was called Albert Prince Consort. Now, apparently, this was after the husband of Queen Victoria, who had died in 1861, so only 5 years earlier. And I guess this Reverend James Nisbet wanted to, I don't know, remember him, I guess. Of all the times I've personally visited Prince Albert, I've never seen this mentioned before, even though, like I said, I was born and raised in Nipawin. So we commonly drove to Prince Albert to go shopping, and I've spent many summers in Waskesiu, which is in the Prince Albert National Park. And I have never heard it said that this was the name of the husband of Queen Victoria back in the 1800s. So I had no idea about this little tidbit. Anyway, another thing that I learned while researching for this episode is that Prince Albert was actually the first capital city of Saskatchewan. Now, not the province of Saskatchewan, though. So on May 8th, 1882, when the district of Saskatchewan became official, so like I said, not province, but district, Prince Albert was actually named the capital city at that time. Did not know that. Then in 1885, when the Northwest Resistance occurred near Duck Lake, which is another area I hope to include in a future episode, a random side bit of information. I actually found out my dad's father's side settled in a stone house near Duck Lake many, many moons ago. So I'm actually hoping to go there sometime myself and check it out. As I hear, you can actually still see the stone house. It's still standing in the middle of a field somewhere. So one day I hope to get out there. So if any listeners know about a stone house near Duck Lake that was once owned by Rellens, then please let me know because I'd love to connect with whoever owns the area. I'd love to see it. Now, back to what we're talking about tonight, Prince Albert. Now, here we are in 1885. Like I said, we're during the resistance, and apparently the Prince Albert population took a bit of a hit, as its infantry unit was hit the hardest by the resistance near Duck Lake. However, even with the loss, Prince Albert was able to officially become a town in 1885, so in that same year. Now we know that the Canadian Pacific Railway made its way through Regina in 1882 on its way to the west, but the railway connecting Prince Albert to Regina wasn't completed until 1890, so 8 years later. Now I'm assuming that's because the Canadian Pacific Railway was really like pushing for that east to west connection that we've talked about in previous episodes. So I'm guess going north wasn't as big of a priority. I'm not sure. However, this new railway coming in 1890 did seem to push the population of Prince Albert kind of into overdrive because by 1904, the population had surged to 6,000 people, which then allowed Prince Albert to be officially incorporated as a city. However, 1 year later, the city would lose its capital city status when the province of Saskatchewan, so now we're not a district anymore, we're now moving into province status. So we became a province of Saskatchewan in 1905. And with that change, they also changed the capital city. So that's when the capital was changed to Regina. Now, unfortunately, after this, Prince Albert began to run into some bad luck. Although it had been booming at the start of the century, a large hydroelectric dam project that was started in the 1910s had to be abandoned by 1913. Apparently, the price tag for the project was around $3 million, which would be absolutely massive back in the 1910s, I would think. I saw one source mention that this would be the equivalent of $67 million today. So that kind of puts into perspective just how much that would have cost. And then the project was fully abandoned by 1927, which started a bit of a stall in the city's economy. Now, as we just talked about, probably the Canadian Pacific Railway really pushing for that southern route that going from east to west probably would not have helped Prince Albert's economy, even though they had that connection to Regina. So yeah, so that probably didn't help. But then in 1945, something new came to boost the economy again, and this was through tourism and resources. So this was the time when the Prince Albert National Park was established, which I said, Waskesiu. That's where I've spent many summers. Apparently, yeah, that was established in 1945, and it started part of the boom in tourist dollars in the area. And then by the 1980s, things were starting to look great again. The city was bustling, the economy was going well. Like I said, there was also the resources. So they had the pulp and paper mill that kind of were starting to build in the area with all of the trees. And actually, the pulp and paper mill was the area's largest employer for many years and was going strong. So, yes, the city's doing well. The pulp and paper mill's doing well. They have resources, they have tourism, lots of money coming in. Now, unfortunately, this only lasted until 2006. And that is when the pulp and paper mill would be closed, causing more than 700 people to lose their jobs. And I remember this happening. I was no longer living in Nipawin because I had moved to Saskatoon in 2003 after graduating from high school. Yes, I'm dating myself a little bit. But it was still pretty big news that, I had heard about it from the people that were still living in Nipawin, that of course I had family and stuff still in Nipawin. So I had heard about it through the grapevine about this closing. And so for it to be a big deal that people in Nipawin were talking about it, I can only imagine how much more of a big deal it would have been for people living in Prince Albert. Now, Prince Albert has a large government employee base, but still has the tourism north of Prince Albert to this day, with many lakes, cabins, parks, and more. In fact, it seems like they are constantly expanding, from what I can tell. It like just seems like they're constantly expanding. So I think that part of it is still doing okay. And it is really a beautiful area. I love Waskesiu. I love Prince Albert National Park. I know there's also Christopher Lake and Emma Lake and lots of lakes in the area, so it's quite beautiful. Now, there's so much more we could talk about in Prince Albert's history, but I think we'll have to do more episodes on specific locations at a later time, as we are going to run out of time for our stories from our guests. And I know that that is really why we're having this particular episode, so we got to get into them. All right, so now tonight we have the same two contributors from our last collection episode, but these are stories that came up during our season 1 conversations, but they've never been aired. So let's dive into some personal and possibly some more commonly known ghost stories of the Prince Albert area. It kind of depends if you've ever really looked into ghost stories of the Prince Albert area, whether or not you've heard these. But I know that some of them you never have because they're personal experiences that haven't been put up on blog posts and videos and those kinds of things. So first up, we will listen to Shannon. In case you haven't listened to the episodes in season 1, Shannon Sin is an author, as well as the editor and publisher of Black Cat Books in British Columbia. He had come on the show in season 1, and we talked about writing, publishing, as well as the many Saskatchewan ghost stories that he's collected since he was young. Now, in this clip, Shannon shares a few of his favorite ghost stories from his past when he was living in Prince Albert.
Although I'm more of an expert, if you can use that word, for Vancouver Island, I will share a couple of Prince Albert stories that were big when I
Sure.
was growing up because that was those formidable years before we could get into bars and stuff. That's what we did is to drive to these places that we could either have a bush party or we'd go to these haunted type locations and meet other people.
Yep.
And so another well-known story in Canada, or in Prince Albert area, is the Hands Bridge story.
Okay.
So there's a park called the Little Red River Park, just north of the river, north of Prince Albert.
Right.
You can walk to it. I have walked to it before from the city, although it's just a short drive. But I would say that I would consider it outside of the city.
Okay.
And there's like a little service road that cuts through it, and there's this old little arch type of concrete bridge there.
Okay.
And the story goes is that a long time ago, a school bus crashed and went into the river, and all the children drowned. And sometimes people say that it was a bus filled with orphans, but either way, if you park your car in neutral in the middle of the bridge, it'll be pushed to the other side of the bridge.
Oh.
And then if you look, especially at winter when there's like frost or whatever, you'll see tiny little handprints everywhere. And so
Oh.
there's all these stories about it, about again, people's stereos not working. I remember one guy telling me in high school, although to be honest, I don't remember who it was, but they said that their stereo began playing even though it was disconnected,
Oh.
that sort of thing. But this is like it's more of an urban legend because there's similar types of stories across North America of like little hands pushing a car off of a train tracks if it stalls in the tracks or whatever,
Yep.
where there's a tragedy in the past and stuff. So, but it is a fun, fascinating story. They made it so you can't drive on the bridge in 2011, and I
Okay.
think actually that you can't easily go down the road now. Like you'd have to like go on the short little walk or on a bicycle or um, some other means to get to the bridge now. Sadly, over the years, it's become more and more and more graffitied,
Yeah.
like many of these places sometimes are. But that is a very well-known story. Growing up, I'm sure everybody's heard this now, especially with the age of the internet and stuff. But often would hear stories throughout the Prince Albert and northern parts about the Northern Lights and
Yeah.
how that their spirits, ancestor spirits, are ghosts, and if you whistle, they'll come down and abduct you. So that was a huge story too. One of the places very reputed to be haunted in Prince Albert is Kinsman Park.
Hmm.
It's a large park on 22nd Street and Central. And the story is that used to be the grounds that they hanged people. And I have never verified if this is true, but there's 13 people that were hanged there that were sent to be executed. And on the northeast corner, apparently there's 5 people that were buried there. So the story
Oh.
is that you sometimes hear them speaking or crying, especially at EMPs, like if people try to record it.
Hmm.
And you often hear that people, the story, the legend is that people's dogs don't want to walk in that part of the park
Oh,
because it's
interesting.
kind of like a circuit around it. And then one of my favorite stories, residential stories from Prince Albert, is the Arts Center. And so this is close to the river, um, and it's on Central Avenue again.
Hmm.
And this building was built in the 1890s, and it was supposed to be the courthouse and opera house. And it has a bell tower, so it kind of like you could tell it's old and very unique, especially for Prince Albert.
Hmm.
And people say that you often can see faces looking out the windows at night.
Oh.
And I've heard that for years and years and years. And also that the lights turn on and off, that there's lots of walking heard, like footsteps, your typical things, and the feeling that there's a presence around. And one of my favorite stories about it is that that you can hear old fashioned music from that era, from the opera era,
Oh, yeah.
and see couples dancing.
Oh, cool.
I think that's very cool. I
That
mean, it's like
is.
one of those things that's like probably in the world of ghosts and ghost stories, if it happened, it probably happened once. And then the story was like, this is often seen, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a very interesting story for Prince Albert. But there is a ton of residential stuff there. You know, you're always worried about stigmatizing any residents, but that is one haunted small
Hmm.
city. Story I was told from my cousin's husband, so a relative by marriage. He was a police officer, and when he's no longer a police officer in Prince Albert, but when he was working in Prince Albert, new to the force, one of his first cases was a very violent domestic assault against a woman, and she didn't make it. Tragically, she died.
Hmm.
A young Indigenous woman, and he said it really bothered him. It stuck with him, and he felt compelled to go back to drive by the scene of the murder a year later. And on the anniversary of her murder, he drove his police cruiser there. And just as he pulled up and went to park, he looked and he saw her standing in the window staring at him.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he said it was like one of the eeriest things he's ever seen. And the way he told me, I just got shivers, and I got shivers telling you
I got them too.
now because it's like if like to know him is like he's not the type of person, like I've never heard him tell a ghost story. I've never heard him exaggerate. He's in our family just a very well respected person that's just like matter of fact,
Hmm.
and everybody likes him, but he's not one of those people that's a storyteller. And when he
Yep.
told me this, it was kind of like he knew my interest, and it was more of an aside, like he told me that this had happened, and I believe him. Like there's no indication at all that this didn't happen. So that story stuck with me as well, even though it's not really a haunted location. I don't know. I mean, my feeling was that maybe it just happened once
Yeah.
and it, it wouldn't be the anniversary of the death or anything. And the way that he felt about it was that she showed up because he was there,
Yeah.
because he had cared and because he was trying. He's living with that case, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since he felt called to go there. That sounds like maybe she wanted him to.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
So, okay, so next we all have Heather, also known as H.P. Bain, and she's back to share some of her personal stories from Prince Albert. She worked there for a while, and so she had some experiences that she was kind enough to share while she was on the show in season one. And if you haven't heard the previous episodes, Heather is, because she's been on the show twice now, which is awesome. Heather is the author of the Sullivan Gray series, which is a paranormal crime series, among others. And they feature a private investigator that can see the ghosts of his homicide victims. It's a great series, and I highly recommend you check them out. Now, let's hear about her experiences.
I did have, other experiences where I'd seen, um, again in Prince Albert, I'd come back to my apartment one night and I'd sat there, at the turnoff to get into my parking lot. I sat there and waited because there was this guy who was limping really badly, like this. He was solid, totally solid,
Yeah,
like guy, a bit older fellow, and he was limping really badly, and it was taking forever to get across. So my parking spot was just basically two in from the road. So I pulled in and I was watching to see, well, where is he? And, because I wanted to make sure he was okay because I
yeah,
thought something's not right. And it's nighttime. So I was also a bit nervous being a female by myself. So I
definitely.
kind
Yep.
of waited for a minute. Well, and I didn't see him get across. Like I didn't see him after that. So I got out of the car and I was looking everywhere. Like there's fields where I was living. There were large park type spaces, open
Oh, okay.
spaces.
Yeah.
He was nowhere. He just vanished, literally
Oh,
vanished.
really? Oh my
So
goodness.
yeah, it was no sign of him. Once I got out of my car, he was gone. And I just
Yeah.
thought, okay, first off, there's nowhere for him to have disappeared to. There's like I can see everything. Everything's lit up really well, so you could see everywhere around you. And he's nowhere.
Yeah.
And also the fact that he was moving that slowly, there's just no
Yeah.
way
No
he
way he
could have
could have
even
just
run.
ran.
No, so that I haven't really got another explanation for that, except that I saw something, ghosty,
Yeah.
ghost-like, right? I mean, whatever it might be, but I have no explanation for where this man went. And I mean, like I said, he was solid, like a perfectly solid person that
Person. Yep.
I thought was, so yeah, it was. So I mean, I've had a few of those types of experiences. Like I've had some other ones which I won't get into all of for time purposes, but yeah, I've sort of been lucky enough, I think, to have a few different experiences like that, and just to sort of, like I say, it helps to kind of remind you there's more to
Yeah, that's true.
life than what we see in front of us all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny that you said that because I was just talking to someone little while ago on the show, and we are talking about ghosts. I said, I've never seen a ghost. He said, I've had some experiences, but I've never seen a ghost. I said, well, every time I've seen them, I don't realize they're ghosts at the time.
Yeah.
It's just that suddenly there's no one there.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. I think I wonder sometimes about that, like how, because I can think of two other experiences I've had, same as that.
Yeah.
Somebody's solid,
Yeah.
and then they're not there. And it's like that was the most obvious one, so that's one I brought up. But I've had a couple other ones, you pass somebody in the car, you're driving by, and you look back, and they're not there
They're not
anymore.
there anymore. Yep.
Or I was in another parking lot at another place I was living. The same. I was waiting for this guy to come in who'd been walking along in this old dressed in black with a hood, and I thought, does he live here? And you're waiting, and they don't. They're not there, and it's
Yeah.
just makes you wonder how many people have actually seen ghosts and not known it.
That's what we were talking about. He's like, well, maybe
Yeah,
I did see a ghost and I just didn't realize. I said, well, yeah, because yeah, that's
yeah.
every single time I've had it. I don't always see their features, but it might be, but I always think it's a person.
Hmm.
But then suddenly they're just gone. And you kind
Yeah,
of go, okay.
I know. I know I mean, yeah, it's a thing. I mean, we don't know. I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? I've talked to other people who've had the same experience where they've seen things that, again, thought they were solid people, and but they're not there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, sometimes I don't know why it is. Sometimes we get this little glimpse into
Yeah.
this other world or dimension or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting how that works. That's, for whatever random reason, we just catch this glimpse. And I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. I mean, I like to think at some point in time physics will
Yeah.
explain this, and science will come up with you know, an explanation, and sort of admit that there's something else
Something
beyond
else, exactly. Yeah.
this world. I mean, it took them forever to discover atoms, right?
Yeah. All right, that's it for this Haunted Saskatchewan Listener Collection episode. Huge thanks to Shannon and Heather for sharing their stories in season 1 so that we could put the collection together here tonight. And to all of you who keep sending in your experiences. I'm really excited for some future episodes because I have some new experiences that have never been featured. So yeah, listen for those coming soon. If you've got a ghost story from anywhere in Saskatchewan, I'd love to hear it. Stick around for details on how to submit your own story for a future episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got more haunted history, more listener stories, and maybe even a few surprises along the way. We shall see. Thank you for listening to ParaGhoul Paranormal. If you have a ghost story or an unexplained event that you'd like to share, then make sure you head over to my website at kdkulpa.com and submit your tale today. You might just hear it on our next Haunted Saskatchewan Listener Collection episode. But before you go, I just want to say thank you for being here. Every listen, every share, every bit of support helps me take this podcast further. Interviewing bigger names in the horror and paranormal world, traveling to haunted places, and creating more behind-the-scenes content just for you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with a friend. I'll keep doing my part to make the show something special and spooky and something for you to enjoy. Now stay tuned for more episodes where we uncover more secrets, unravel more mysteries, and dive deeper into the shadows. This is Katie Culpa, signing off. Until next time, my ghouls.